right. Ms. Green, wonderful job in your observation yesterday with getting students to meet all of the instructional foundations.
Okay.
You nailed that strand. You definitely have put in a lot of work over the past, I think we've had 14 days of instruction so far.
Yeah.
And you are solid with those tier 1 expectations. So nice work so far.
All right.
All right, so now that we have set you and your students up to successfully master the instructional foundations on a daily basis, I want to focus on writing precise learning objectives for your transition class. So let's look at the instructional standards that Mastery has created for us, where the 3M objectives are defined. So reading the 3M objective, I want you to tell me what are the key pieces to writing or having a 3M objective.
Driving the instruction, making them manageable, and so you can measure them. You want to measure what the students are doing related to the objectives of the class.
Yep.
So
those are the 2 M's. What's the last M?
The last M, and they're most important.
Yes. So the most important thing, something that's manageable that you can accomplish in 1 period, and something that is measurable. Okay. So you named the 3 key pieces of why a 3M objective is important and the definition of it. Can you tell me, I want to go a little bit further, why is that important for your lesson?
So the students and the teacher know what the students are learning, what is part of the instruction for that day, and the purpose of what they're learning. The students, so they know this is what I'm supposed to be learning, and this is why.
And what is one piece that you're missing?
Measurable.
Measure. Yes.
So I can see it, whether or not they're learning it and catching on to it.
Yes, so that you know, hey, did they get this at the end of the lesson, or do I need to redo this the
teacher.
next day? Great, thank you for unpacking that a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a video of Mr. Hart, who is our API of instruction. He is working with one of our teachers, Miss Bryan, formerly Miss Lucente, on practicing writing 3M objectives. So we're going to get to doing this part in a little bit, but I want to show you the exemplar of what it looks like. So it's about 4.5 minutes. So let's watch this. we're gonna do. We're gonna practice writing some objectives together,
Okay.
and then we're gonna kind of compare them when we're done.
Okay.
So make sure that you get this. Okay. So with their exemplar in mind, what do you think is the gap between like their end result, which is having a 3M objective, and what you showed in your class yesterday, based off of your objectives? And I have them right here if you don't remember what they were.
Thank you, 'cause I was gonna have to go
You had
back.
3 separate ones.
Okay.
So that they would review the first 5 empowerment words,
Mhm.
compare self-esteem and empowerment, and confirm words through acting them out. So knowing that the standards are most important, manageable, and measurable, do yours have that?
It's the measurable piece that I'm missing.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they're definitely manageable because you were able to get through all of that in the one lesson,
Mhm.
like you just said. It is the most important. It's part of your unit plan, so you're hitting that, but it's the measurable.
Measurable
piece.
part.
Yep. So that's going to be our primary focus when we're writing your 3M objectives,
Okay.
and then that'll drive your entire lesson.
Cool.
Right? That'll be all of the activities that you're doing. That's how you're going to see if they get it, and if you
Okay.
can move on the next time. All right, awesome. All right, so what do you think our action step is going to be moving forward in this meeting? What are we going to do? What am I going to ask you to do?
Right. That's some objectives that are
Mhm.
measurable.
Yep. So we're going to look at some upcoming lessons to determine what students have to know and what they have to do to be able to master your objective that you're going to create.
Okay.
And that's what Mr. Hart and Ms. Lucente were talking about. Like, what do they have to know? How are they doing that? And the what?
Okay.
What's important and how are they getting there? And then we need to identify the most important parts, and that's going to be our objective for your lesson. All right. So, can you state those back to me? We are going to be
Looking up at upcoming lesson plans to determine what students have to know and do to be able to master the objective. Of the skills knowledge, identify what are the most important parts for you to address in the lesson. Which do students already have some mastery of, and which are the key next skills to push them further. Identify the right end goal, write out key understanding students must reach by the end of the lesson.
Yep. All right, so thank you for stating it back to me. I'm not going to have you write it down right now. I'm going to keep it up here, though, so
Okay.
we know what it is that we're looking for the sake of time. All right, so let's actually plan before we start practicing. So I created this chart, and it goes over, there's basically 4, because there's like 4 days coming up, essentially.
Mhm.
So I want to go through the unit plan, and I want to talk about what are the key understandings in each lesson, what do students have to know, and then what do they have to do.
Okay.
So this is the part that I want you to focus on, the do, which is the measurable piece to it.
Okay.
All right? So they give you a lot of the activities already, but what do they actually have to do so that you can measure if they mastered it, and then we can move on.
Alrighty.
And then also the end goal. So the end goal is like, do they need to be able to define self-esteem? Do they need to be able to define all of those words that you had on the worksheet yesterday, like by heart? Can they reference that? Is that your end goal before they can move on to the next lesson?
Okay.
Okay? So we're gonna take 3 minutes to complete this. I at least wanna have like 1 day so that we can tease that out and make sure we're on the right track before we do the rest of them, okay? And I'm actually gonna use that with you,
Mhm.
and we're gonna do it together. Separately, but then we'll come back together. All right, so this is it for tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
Okay. So we need to look through. We're gonna do it separately.
Mhm.
All right.
And I can write in here,
Yeah,
right?
you can write on there. If you need more space, like turn it over. Don't feel free to use that only in the chart. It is kind of tiny. You ready?
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So, what are the key understandings that you came up with for this particular lesson? What do kids need to
Alright.
know?
So for this lesson, they definitely know how have to review empowerment because
Mhm.
we started that on Monday. So we'll be reviewing empowerment and identifying self-esteem characteristics in themselves, and then they can identify it in their peers.
Yep, that's exactly what I have.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
All right. So then, for the do, how are they doing that? And this is the measure
This
piece.
is what this is
where
the
you're.
part. Yes.
How will we measure that?
All right, so I did manage to took this lesson and I kind of like tweaked it with a 3x5 card.
Mhm.
They'll write down a strength. This is a whole group in a circle. We'll write down a strength and we'll kind of exchange cards amongst each other.
Yeah.
But they'll write down a strength related to how they feel, the characteristics of their self-esteem.
Okay. So I think for this activity, it's pretty self-explanatory, and I think this is your do,
Mhm.
right? So I would do it exactly like they say to do it
Okay.
in here. So I would even give them like a bigger piece of paper,
Bigger
right?
piece?
Like
Okay.
you have 12 kids in your class, and
Yes.
they're all there, like, and we want them to be able to actually do this. You could even break it up into 2 separate groups,
I
6
think I
and
might
6.
have to do that. Yeah.
But either way, the activity should still be the same.
Okay.
Have the student's name in the middle. So Jasir's name in the middle. He'll start with his card and literally pass the card to the left or to the right, whatever way you decide. And then the person that's sitting to their left or right needs to identify one of those empowerment words that you've already gone over
Mhm.
that defines that student,
Okay.
right? And then at the end, there should be 6 words, and you can even have the students write like, Jasir says this about this other student, so that you're holding each student accountable to that piece of paper. And then pass it around until they have each of those statements on it, and then that's your end product.
And that's the whole
And
class.
that's how you're able to measure, and you can even walk around as they're doing it. Hey, are they actually writing the words from the self-empowerment worksheet or from the words that we had gone over? Or are they making up their own?
Okay.
And then you can pause and intervene as needed. But that is your do, and that's how you're going to determine, hey, did they master this lesson of self-empowerment or not? And then you could even take it a step further and have them review it, self-reflect on what their peers are saying. That could be the next day, the next lesson. Hey, do I agree with what these people say? Was I surprised by that? And like you could just even tease that out further,
Okay.
which would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like building self-esteem in and of themselves.
Okay.
I like that.
Yeah.
Good. So we had a lot of the same stuff. So the next thing that I want to do is actually write your 3M objective for
Okay.
this day. So what I did was I printed out a couple of worksheets. So
Mhm.
here are some of the sample verbs. So when Micah was talking to Ms. Susente, like you can't just say comprehend, right? Because that's like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Or you can't say they're going to understand or they're going to know this.
Okay.
How are we actually defining that they know it, right? So here are some sample verbs that you can put in a 3M objective that are going to make that measurable.
Okay.
So here's a whole bunch of examples, and they're broken down by knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. So thinking back to what we're going to have the students do and the end goal for what we just teased out, what word do you think would best make sense there to fit in your objective?
I identify.
Yeah.
That was the only word. I need another one.
So identify is still a little bit vague in
Vague.
my opinion.
Okay.
For this specific activity, like students are actually, where was I
So
pointing to?
relate.
Not relate, but so you're going to be looking at those students' name cards at the end, right? And you're
Mhm.
going to see, did everyone write down about each student words that are reflected in the self-esteem or the empowerment worksheet words that you had already gone
Listing.
over? So did they list or did they label those exact words? Because you don't want
Gotcha.
them using any old word. You want them using those specific words that you guys had already defined the day before.
Mhm.
So you could say students will label, or do you want to go with list? I would go with label because they're not necessarily listing. We only want them
They're
to identify
They're
one
not
of them.
identifying, right?
Yep. So students will be able to label. And then what else are we having them do?
We're having them.
When you think back to the 3M objective, sorry, let me grab this from you. Label is the measurable piece. Students will be able to label. What's the rest of the objective that we decided upon? Characteristics.
They are doing the name on the card and saying what each student is.
So for the most important thing, which is what we actually want them to define, we want to make sure that they label characteristics of self-empowerment or
and the personal power words.
personal power words.
Mm-hmm.
Power words for, and we're going to just do with their peers for this particular time, right? They're not doing it about themselves because they're not there yet.
Right.
So students will be able to label characteristics of personal power words for their peers.
Okay. Straight to the point.
Straight, they know what they have to do. They have to label. Sorry, I don't know why it's not turning off. They're going to have to label the characteristics. It's the most important thing that you need them to do, and you're going to be able to identify if they're labeling the correct words.
Okay.
And if students know, hey, use those words.
Gotcha.
It's the most important thing. It's measurable and it's manageable. This activity should take 15 minutes. Yep.
Okay.
And that's your objective for the day. All right.
Got it.
Awesome. So we're gonna practice a couple more. We turn the video off. It's been 20 minutes.
Oh, okay.
And we'll go from there.
Is that good enough?